Hey everybody, this is iLad, and I would like to welcome you back to my Starmade tutorial series. In this series of fairly short videos, we're going to be exploring mostly Starmade logic systems, but also Starmade ship systems, and introducing people to the wonderful world of making really interesting crap in Starmade. Alright guys, so in the last episode we went over various logic gates, and then I told you that in this video I would be working on demonstrating the various sensors available in the game. So that's what we have here, is the group of blocks in which it places sensors. There are a couple other blocks that don't quite fit the theme. I would argue that this randomizer here doesn't. Actually, I guess the others more or less do. But the randomizer is kind of a special case. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it very quickly because it's very, very easy to show what it does. Let's see, grab a button, set it to randomizer, set the randomizer to an output. Right. Basically, anytime, let me separate this out a bit. It doesn't need to be adjacent to it. It doesn't matter really. Basically, anytime you send a signal to a randomizer, the randomizer may or may not change state. Yeah, that's what makes it random. So it's basically, it's like one bit of randomness. So send a signal. Curiously, let me try this with an activation module, and I have to admit I'd forgotten this detail. The randomizer seems to trigger even when the signal it's receiving is off. Let's see, on, off, on, off, on, off. Yeah, see? So basically anytime the state of its input changes, it's going to output a randomly chosen on or off signal. So that's, it's got its uses. You can chain several of these together and get like a larger number than just 1 or 0. You can get, basically any arbitrary number of bits out of this by chaining a bunch of them together. I'm not going to demonstrate that. It has limited usefulness in my opinion. One way that I am using it actually is over on my radar scanner looking thing. This is just for aesthetics. There's no practical value to it at all. But you may notice that it turns a random amount of, it turns in a random arc, like a random number of degrees before stopping or reversing. And that is powered through the use of a randomizer somewhere. Let's see, there's a clock. No, that's not a clock, that's something else. I forget how I built this. I built it a while back. Huh. Oh, there we go. I knew there had to be logic for this around here somewhere. Yeah, so it just gets kind of a more interesting thing than just having this thing like spinning aimlessly constantly. It's still spinning aimlessly, but it's doing so in a more interesting pattern, I think. Outside things like that, I really don't know what I would do with a randomizer. Could build a virtual casino game, I suppose, but it'd take a lot of work, and I'm not going to demonstrate that today. Alright, on to the sensors then. Okay, first we have a step-on trigger. While in astronaut mode, if I touch the sides of the block, or if I sort of push myself down, sorry, on top of the block, nothing happens. There we go, okay. If I put myself in gravity, however, now that there's a clear sense of what's up and down, still touching the sides of the block does absolutely nothing, but I can hop up on top of it and it switches on. Hop on it again, switches off. It acts just like an activation module. It'll stay on as long as I don't turn it back off again. In fact, oh no, I can't switch it on and off manually. This is useful when you have it flush with your floor instead of having it be a block sticking up in the way, because then you can just walk across it, walk across again. Any direction, doesn't matter. Yep. So that's simple and straightforward enough. Alright, so next I'm going to demonstrate the trigger area controller. This is a weird one. I'm just going to be honest with that. I don't actually like the way that the trigger area controller works, because whereas most blocks you would use C and then V to connect it to a logic output, with this one you actually have to place the logic output next to it, adjacent to it. It's weird, it's inconsistent. Hopefully at some point that gets adjusted. But then that logic output will control stuff as normal. I'm actually going to put a light right here because I can't remember if this will activate a light or other logic stuff other than an activation module directly or not. We'll see. But we'll know at least that it's working when this one comes on. You do link the trigger area controller to trigger area, what you call them? Yeah, just trigger areas. And when an entity passes through this, like an astronaut, for instance, that's when you've got your signal coming on. And I should have marked her up with that. I think it's right here. Yeah, that looks right. So if I walk through here, did I miss? There we go. That's it. Every time I walk through, you see it triggers. It's just as though I had activated or deactivated the activation module there. And as you can see, it's not actually affecting the light that's directly next to the controller itself. So that's interesting. That's kind of what I expected to happen, but I wasn't sure. So these are frequently a little frustrating to use. I'll show you what people very often do with them. They'll connect. Let's see. They'll do two systems, and I'm not actually going to build the whole thing as it is, but like this, and they'll wire this output into a gravity block. Basically, you can be walking along perfectly upright like this. You hit this, the gravity switches so that the head is that way, your feet are that way, and you're falling. And when you pass through that one, they will switch back and drop you back into normal gravity so that your feet are on the floor and your head is pointed up. And what that accomplishes is basically a gravity lift or a gravity hallway or something along those lines. So that if you have a long distance to walk and you don't actually want to walk that whole distance, you can fall it instead, which is much faster. I've got a system similar to that in one of my salvagers over there. That mining ship you see docked there. You can go check out my videos on it and see me struggling with trying to come up with an alternative way and then settling for the good old-fashioned gravity hallway. Alright, enough of that. So, this trigger area controller can be, like I said, a little frustrating to work with. Needs work. Many things in the game do. It's under development. Let's clear all this out. Alright, our last sensor block is appropriately enough called a sensor. Alright, so the sensor basically works something like this. You've got an input pointing into the sensor. You've got the sensor directly adjacent to its output, just like the the trigger area controller does. And then you've got the sensor linked not to its output, but to the whatever it is that you want to sense. In this case, the state of a force field. Then you can point your output to whatever other logic you want controlled. So the sensor sits there. It's totally passive. It doesn't do anything until you send it a signal. which is best done, in my opinion, with a button. The button will tell the sensor, check whatever it is you're connected to, and then output your signal to any adjacent logic modules. So if I open this door, in other words, if I turn the force field off and I send a signal, it's going to tell it, hey, that door is turned off. It doesn't matter how many times I send the signal, it's going to get the same result. Turn the door back on, and now it reads that the door is on. Sensors get a little more interesting, a little more complicated when you're trying to read the state of something that is an analog signal rather than a digital on or off signal, like a binary signal. So what I've done here is I've taken taken a cargo block and I've just stuffed it so that it's 55.7% full. Let's bump that up. Ooh, let's see. Just want to get that to as close to 60% as I possibly can. Okay, it says 60%. All right, so the sensor in theory can read, oh yeah, this is 60% full, or it can do it within a range at least. So what we need to do for that is we need to decide how granular do we want this reading to be. Like, do we want it to be to the nearest 10%, the nearest 5%, the nearest 1%? We can do this. We can do this. I'm going to set it to... See, I've got 40 activation modules. I'm going to set it to the nearest 2.5%. Yeah, sure. Why not? So let me place down all these. 6, 7, 8 times 5 equals 40. Select the activation module. Place down, select the sensor. Place down a crap ton of activation modules. And since this is 40, it should be reading the fullness of the storage in 2.5% increments. If I want to test to make sure it's reading an actual 60%, that is going to be, what, 24? Yeah, it should be 24. That's right. Of these should be turned on. Now, the percentage of these that are turned on set the threshold. If it's at least 60%, because I've got 60% of these on, if it's at least 60% full, the signal will be on. If it's less than that, the signal will be off. So I send my signal and I see that it's off. So actually, there's a rounding error visible on the screen here. Let me send one of these over. Yeah. See how precise it is? Like one single light block was enough to tip the balance. Let's see, now I'm looking for 62.5% and it's off. Now I'm looking for 57.5% and it's on. Now 40 is kind of weird to do that with. You get that. There's absolutely no need to choose such a weird number. I like to do them sometimes in quarters or fifths. So with 3 of these lit up, it's looking for exactly 60%, and it's there. Again, if I take one out, it's not quite there, even though the rounding error says that it is, right? It's probably not a rounding error. This is probably like 59.7 or whatever percent full, right? But that's not quite 60. Like, this is going to be an absolute measure. You can do similar things. I believe you can link it to your shields. Let me see. Do I have any shield blocks in my inventory? I think I probably do. There we go. It's at least 60% full now. Is it at least 80? Yes. Is it 100%? Yes. Sweet. So I believe you can. Use sensors currently on shields. Maybe thrust. Let's see if you can use it on power and if that gives you anything meaningful. All right, so it gives you something on power. Available power, perhaps? Or power usage, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. So what happened with this is that the sensors used to read power capacity, and then capacity was dumped with power 2.0. We don't have capacity anymore. I know it says like chamber capacity. That's a totally different thing. And so now I'm not really sure what sensors read. They should be able to read thruster usage, I believe. I'm pretty sure. And I'm not sure what other systems it might be able to read it at the present time. Now, there are planned updates where it's going to be able to read old systems that it used to have the ability to look at are coming back. They're being decoupled from the chamber system that we have going on with Power 2.0. If you have no idea what that means because you're not that advanced in the game, don't worry about it. Just know that by the time you're watching this, it's entirely possible that sensors can detect other things as well. But we're going to leave the sensor block there. All right, so there are a couple of sensors that actually are not in the sensor group on your hotbar. That is, believe it or not, your button and your activation module. These both count as sensors, as I will demonstrate here in just shortly. We place an activation module down there, place a button right there, and send our docked entity over to this end of the rail. You see that once it is fully engaged with the rail on this end, the adjacent activation module, which is not linked in any way, either direction, just because it's adjacent, it will become active. If I send our docked entity back to this side, see, the button does the same thing, only of course being a button, it clears itself after a half second. So, see it one more time. Yeah, and back here. Yeah. I'm going to replace this with a button, and I'll show you how this is useful. If I tie this button into this one, which reverses the direction of the rails, and if I tie this one into this one, once I get it started, it will self-trigger its own direction reversal. Or anything else that you care to have it trigger. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a clock. It outputs a logic signal in a very predictable time cycle. You can change the length of the time in between the outputs by simply adjusting the length of the rail. And once we get into rails, you'll see that you can adjust the speed of the clock also by adjusting a rail speed controller, which that'll be covered in an upcoming video. In fact, I believe that may be the next video. All right, there's another way to do this. With if it's too inconvenient to have your sensor block, which in this case would be the button, directly adjacent to the rail, you can actually C on the rail and V on the button output. And you may have noticed a little pop-up I got up here that said can't connect. Just ignore that. I don't know what that's about. But now every time it crosses that rail, it activates, the pop-up, but also it activates the output. Yeah? Let's try it with this one. Okay. What that means is that for a simple system like this, we can actually get rid of these entirely. I can point this straight into this straight into this. And we've simplified our system just a smidge. You'll find that many old-time Starmade players don't do it this way. We go ahead and leave the adjacent buttons to control it anyway. And that is because we have bad memories of those particular connections being unreliable. I think actually most of that's been fixed now, but old paranoias die hard. It is what it is. Yep. Pretty neat, huh? Well, that'll do it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed my little tutorial here. If you want to see more, in particular, if you want to understand rails in Starmade and how we can make things move and animate, stick around for the next video, because that's what I'll be covering then. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time. You might consider hitting the subscribe button so you know that you'll see whatever we've got going on next after the rails. And yeah, love to see you back. Y'all take care. Bye-bye. Hey guys, thanks again for watching. If you'd like to support my channel, consider purchasing a channel membership. We've got very, very low monthly rates, and your support in that way would be gratefully, gratefully accepted. Thank you so much for considering it. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.